IVM.
Before you start listening to The Seen and the Unseen, the 100th episode of Simplified releases today and I am a guest on it. Simplified is an awesome show hosted by my good friends Naren, Chuck and Shrikit. Check that out as well. We speak about fake news in that show. And now on with The Seen and the Unseen. It is an accident of birth that I happen to be born right-handed. I've spent no time wondering what life would be like if I was left-handed or ambidextrous. Right-handed people, left-handed people, ambidextrous people all get treated more or less the same in India. They're allowed to express their handedness, as it were, and they're not discriminated against in any way. It's also an accident of birth that I happen to be born heterosexual. Unlike that earlier accident of birth, though, this is one with huge implications. If I hadn't been born heterosexual, I don't like the word straight because it implies that those who are not straight must be crooked in some way. If I hadn't been born heterosexual, I would have grown up full of self-doubt about my own normalcy, feeling a guilt and fear and confusion that I should not have had to feel. I can imagine what it must be to grow up left-handed. I can empathize, but I'm not sure I can imagine what it would have been like to grow up gay in India.
Welcome to The Seen and the Unseen, our weekly podcast on economics, politics, and behavioral science. Please welcome your host, Amit Varma.
Welcome to The Seen and the Unseen. Today's episode is about being gay in India, and my guest today is my friend Navin Noronha. Navin is a writer and a stand-up comedian. You'll find relevant links in the page for the show at seenunseen.in. And he is also an openly gay man whose work talks about what it is like to grow up gay in India. But that's not the only reason I invited him to be on this episode. He also hosts a wonderful podcast which I often find poignant and also laugh out loud funny in parts, called Keeping It Queer, in which he talks to members of the queer community about their stories. He's thus not just an artist in his own right, but also someone who, through this brilliant show, has drawn out different kinds of insight from a variety of gay people. But before I begin my conversation with him, let's take a quick commercial break. Like me, are you someone who loves fine art, but can't really afford to have paintings by the artists you like hanging on your walls? Well, worry no more. Head on over to indiancolors.com. Indian Colors is a company that licenses images of the finest modern art from some of the best artists in India and adapts them into objects of everyday use. These include wearable art like stoles and shrugs, home decor like cushion covers and table runners, and accessories like tote bags. This allows art lovers to actually get fine art into their homes at an accessible price, and artists get royalties on sales just like authors do. What's more, Indian Colors now has an exciting range of new products, including fridge magnets with some stunning motifs and salad bowls and platters made of mango wood. Their artists include luminaries like Babu Xavier, Vasvo X Vasvo, Brinda Miller, Dilip Sharma, Shruti Nelson and Pradeep Mishra. They accept bulk orders for corporate and festival gifting, but even if you want to buy just for yourself or a friend, head on over to indiancolors.com. That's colors with an OU. And if you want a 20% discount, apply the code IVM20. That's IVM for IVM Podcast. IVM20 for a 20% discount at indiancolors.com. Navin, welcome to The Seen and the Unseen.
Ooh, I just felt like goosebumps going to my body when you were introducing me, because I didn't realize I've done so much, and you made it sound like, oh shit, this guy's done all this work. I just do things and some of them do, end up becoming
No,
better.
And you've actually done more than I mentioned, because last week I saw your fantastic show, The Good Child, the special that you're touring around the country, and I'd encourage listeners to watch out for that because it's really good. And I was very moved by it. I expected it to be funny because I know you're a funny guy, but I was also very moved by the arc of your story and sort of the various, the sense that for someone growing up, in a suburb of Bombay, Bhayandar as it were, you had not just one but various coming outs at different levels.
Yeah.
And the story touched me deeply. So I want to sort of spend the first half of this podcast talking about your childhood. Like you were, you used to go to church regularly. You were a master of ceremonies, I think.
Yeah, for the longest time. Before I got into comedy, I spent, from my board exams that were done at 16 to 23, I was just hosting events, comparing birthday parties, baptisms, communions, weddings, engagement, all kinds of shit. I was always the guy there, and leading it, not only just being a master of ceremony for the heck of it. I would sit down with the family, plan together. And there were ladies in my church who would see me working for the church, and they would like have dreams about me becoming a priest one day. Like that was intensely what they believed in. And then some of them would die the next month, and my mom would be like, oh, they were like really having prophetic thoughts because they were going to pass away soon. I'm like, Mom, calm down. But at the age of 13, I was genuinely interested in going for the church because at around the same time I realized what my orientation was. And at the same time, like everybody around me was so Catholic and we had such blinders on. I kind of believe that this is my destiny, because if God did not want me to be like a married man, then this is what he would give me to make me more in touch with him. So I would spend more time in the church by default. So all my skills, from talking publicly to like being artistic in any kind of way, be it music or being in the choir, it was all cultivated within the church. But my world was only limited to that, and that's when the whole first coming out phase happened, because I realized that there's a world outside, which is like, if you go to the better suburbs like Bandra and Andheri, there's an entire cultural hotspot that is being birthed, and we are not a part of that. So I would go to this place called Hive and Car and do open mics over there, and then by default meet more cooler people who were doing cool things. There were poets, filmmakers, artists of all sorts, and within this, the first proper understanding happened of how much I was losing out by just being in a very small community of people who just like, whenever you did something nice, they patted you on the back, but where would that lead to? And in that understanding, I learned more about what the church was not telling us, the pedophilia racket and what was happening back in our own playground. And my mom and I would have vehement arguments about that. So hence the concern of like ever coming to terms with my orientation were diminished because of the fact that I grew up in such a staunch community that would never accept me, and hence the walking away from the church happened like a little more drastically than I imagined, but it had to happen, I feel.
But so take me a little back earlier in your childhood, and again I should apologize in advance if my questions seem very ignorant or insensitive in any way, because I'm just coming from a position of pure curiosity. And also you grew up in a different time than, I'm a fair bit older than you, and you're 26, I'm 44. I grew up in a different time, so, and it's very hard for me to sort of imagine your childhood. So growing up as a young person in Bhayandar, at a time where you didn't have so much access to the media and the internet and so much of gay culture coming in,
exactly.
How was it that, like, what was the process like of discovering that you're gay, and then how do you come to terms with those feelings?
I was always a loner kid per se. Like when we moved a lot of houses when I was younger, because my parents are first generation immigrants to Bombay. So we just had to like move and find our own place. So when we finally got our own apartment, we moved to Bhayandar, and I was like 7, and a lot of friendships happened within the kindergarten to like the first 3 years of schooling, and they last till like later years because you're friends in school. But I didn't have any of those friends. So
and this would be like 99, 2000,
98,
right?
yeah, 98, yeah. Right. So 99, when we were like really properly settled down, my sisters were much older than me, so they would go to college, and my mom and dad were both like working very hard to like make sure we could make ends meet. So I was left alone in my own imaginary world. So like, in a very Andy Kaufman-esque style, I would sit against the bed, look at the wall, and make my own, like pictures and everything. So I was always into like creating drama and art and everything in my own head. I would write scripts and everything. I've still got those scribbled little notes of like my handwriting. I would read Tinkle comics and then try to adapt those stories to like real life. So all of that was like, a small part of my life, and I had very good friends who would play like imaginary friends with me as well at the same time. So very close circuit. I lost one of my really dear friends to like a spinal problem that he had, and since then I became a little more detached. So we were 3 of us very close to each other, and one of them moved to Russia and one of them passed away. So like I felt like a lot of my life was going to be losing friends on different levels, and that kind of is also a very common theme across my life, that I become close to people and they either move out, move away, or just like stop existing sometimes. So I've dealt with that kind of thing, like why make friends or why make family when they're all going to just like walk away from you. So it became easy for me when I grew up to like detach myself in the whole coming out phase, was because I just felt that there was a threshold I had reached, and the whole emotional gush that happens when you're first understanding that you are feeling differently than the others. You don't have anybody to tell, like as I joke about in my bit, that I would go to the girls and we'd talk about Spice Girls and stuff like that. At the same time, the boys would try to show me straight porn and try to see that if that works on me. So it's like it was always a pendulum of being confused about what it is and why are they feeling differently. Like, like a boy and a girl would hold hands, and I would want that, but not with a girl, like it's all kinds of weird thoughts and brain waves that you don't know how to define. and hence it's very important like to understand at an early age. And in my travels, I've figured out that a lot of schools, not only just like better schools that are internationally controlled or whatever, even the low level schools that are state run are now teaching kids about same sex relationships, which is important, because if there was somebody out there telling me it was okay back when I was 13 or 14, it would have been cool. I remember we did have a sex education class, and my ma'am clearly said that, like, because it's difficult to pass a hard stool, imagine how painful anal sex is. And that's the only statement she said about gay sex.
Wow.
And I'm just like scratching my head waiting, tell me more, what like I'm having all these feelings and nothing is being answered.
She must have a raunchy life. So basically, you didn't have a framework where you could put the way you were feeling. It was just that you were different and you couldn't understand why. And
nothing. I was like told that there's a word for it called baila, which is very commonly used in Bombay. Baila is like womanesque. So if you have a limp arm and if you behave a certain way, if your hips are whatever, if you do all of that. And that's again the picture Bollywood paints, and
right.
we understand that. I remember when I was younger, Maine Pyar Kiya, some of these movies like had a stereotypical gay character, and I'm like, I'm not relating to this either. This is not me. So what is this definition that I'm trying to find? And hence, getting access to Facebook and social media became very handy around when I was 17 or 18. I would go to cyber cafes and then sit and start looking up shit. So on Orkut, there were a lot of communities, a lot of gay communities that would have like chat rooms, and you could talk to people who were counselors. Yahoo Messenger happened. The whole ISL generation that we were exposed to was really handy for like people who were gay to communicate with each other. We sometimes look at internet as a very bad place because of how you can fall in trouble. But for a lot of gay youngsters, it becomes a very key factor in determining who they are by talking to people who are the same. Like I made a pseudo account on Facebook, and I'm kind of proud of that, because I would like go and talk to people from UK, US, Australia who were openly gay, and they were not ashamed of who they were, and they would talk to me about how they're settling down with their partners, how marriages are still difficult to get in some parts, how they're hoping to find licenses, and all of that kind of inspired me to like then talk about it. I remember, because in the article I talk about the man I dated when I was 19 who was 40, and we were like almost like 2 generations apart. But I still would sit down at a cafe with him and tell him that, I would think about coming out, because, like the world is so amazing. I want to come out. I want to talk about this, be an activist, try to figure out how we can get more people like us to open up, because there was clearly a market of people talking very hush-hush, behind these chat rooms. Why can't we bring them out in the open? And then I understood why we can't, because then I figured out how difficult life is as a gay man. So then the whole, internet factor happened.
In one of the conversations that I've heard of yours, you talk about how you first came out to your close friend Amit, who was one of the 3 friends, and the other one passed away, and Amit went to Russia, and and that was a very interesting story. And is that the first time you were coming out to someone?
Exactly. That was, no one knew before that. No one literally had any idea. And I remember I was talking to my Canadian friend Richard, and he was like, if you want to tell somebody who's grown up with you, so you can always confide in them, and based on how they react, you'll know how it's going to be further on. And both Amit and I come from very impoverished backgrounds, but with dreams of like doing a lot of things. We were very inspired by Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, those kind of kid stories who would like run away and find their own new world, because his family was very difficult to him. Like his father's a drunkard, and his mom's like got some back stuff, injuries and stuff like that. So he had to really work his entire life, so much so that like he accumulated all this money just to like go and study abroad. But he wouldn't tell me that he's leaving until like my last day of exams, because he knew I would exams up if he let me know beforehand, because we had that kind of strong friendship. Even thinking about that is kind of emotional for me. But he's such kind of friend that he would like have your back all the time. I'm like, okay, I can tell him right now. And it was like a lot of preparation. We used to go out on evening walks every day. We have the small little creek in Bhayandar. Like, say what you may about Bhayandar and its population. There's a nice little creek over there where you can really enjoy the sea breeze, and the land ends over there. And you can then look at Vasai and laugh at them. So
people in Bhayandar laughing at someone.
That's life. That's how you cooperate, right?
Right.
And so we would like think of one day crossing the creek on our own little boat and shit like that. Very, very like gay stuff, if I may say so myself. And then like he said, okay, I'm moving to Russia, and I was kind of like very taken aback by that. I'm like, oh my god, all these dreams we had and all these adventures we want to go to, what happened? But that was afterwards. Before that, I had to tell him about myself, and we went on a nice little walk, and I built up to it, and almost very naturally happened when I told him. There was no pretense or there was no beating around the bush. And he just asked me, like, did you ever get hurt, like, in some way, like, physically, did someone assault you or whatever? So I was like, no, there's nothing like that behind that. It's just like, I felt this way. And I would, like, ask him a lot of times about the local train travels because he would complain about some men being handsy. And based on that, I would gauge my friend's reaction to see how much they'd be okay with a man who's gay and in their friend circle, no? Because if their first image is someone touching them wrongly in the train, then they always have that kind of fear in real life as well. So you have to really calm them down and make them know that it's okay. We're all the same, and hence this happened. So he mulled over it overnight. Next day when we walk, he's like, it's okay, I read about it, it's all cool, don't worry. And because he was a man of science in general, he was really cool to come on board. So when that first acceptance happened that beautifully, there was no, there was no going back and forth with that. I felt, okay, this seems normal, so I can tell more friends. So we told one more friend of mine, Gaurav, and from there, it just, my circle became bigger and bigger. And my support system initially was very strong. And some of them would sometimes laugh and make fun and everything, but I knew they were doing it in jest, not so much to, like, insult me. Like, one guy just thought that was a prank I was trying to pull, so he laughed for like 5 minutes straight, and I'm like, no, this is not.
I am funny at other times, but not right now. Yeah.
You should see me in bed. So like that. So I had to, like, be very patient with all these friends, and they came around in their own beautiful way, and I've had the most amazing learning from this that, if you are who you are and if you really own up to it, then nothing's going to stop you. Even though some people say they hate, like, a certain flamboyance in their life or whatever, it's true to an extent, but beyond that, there'll always be people who have your back. I think that's one learning from all the coming out stories I've heard, that we eventually end up finding our own families in our own beautiful ways. So there's nothing stopping you, really.
And these are people who've kind of grown up with you and known you and, been to school, college with you. So it's a different matter. They already know who you are and they don't apply those instinctive stereotypes to you. But apart from that, from people who may not know you so well, maybe really extended family or whatever, I mean, were you treated differently? Did you sense that it's a problem?
Well, like, there's always a certain level of mental blockage that people have and when they talk to you. So they have curiosity, and I think in the modern workplace in Bombay, at least, when you go and work and you're open about your orientation, no one really bothers you as such. There's no backlash, so to say. Nothing that I have felt, in fact, like, because me working at IVM was because of the fact that I was very strongly talking about this, and that became like a mouthpiece for me to, like, channel my energies into, like, researching more into this instead of just assuming everything is okay. So that's why I feel that it's important to have an openness to your colleagues as well, because then they'll have dumb questions. Just answer those questions and move on, And then you can have the same kind of conversation that you have with someone. For example, if your colleague's like, hey, my husband's not in a mood today or whatever, you can be like, hey, my boyfriend's feeling the same. So I want that kind of normalcy to happen in a cafeteria conversation instead of just being like, oh, listen to my gay story. Like, I want a normalcy at every level, and that we are still reaching to that point slowly and steadily.
And maybe you're lucky to be in Bombay also. I imagine in a small town.
I think we have to check our privileges when it comes to this. It's much more difficult in smaller parts and pockets. But even some of the men I've dated in the past, they're all working in their own little spaces, right? So despite the industry that they're working in, they always find comfort in confiding in some of their colleagues who are really supportive about this. So even if you can't be loud about it, you can always have a small pocket that you can always talk to, because you need that immediate support system. If you're going to work like 14 or 15 hours of your day, find people who can understand what you're going through, because if you're going to suffocate on that very fact for the longest time, it's going to be difficult. Because I remember I was watching Milk, which is a biography on Harvey Milk, and after, like, losing consecutively for 2-3 times for the parliament, he urged all his friends and people who he knew who were gay, just go out and come out, because people who know you will, again, like, care for you because they know you, and they work for you, or they work with you, or they understand what your lifestyle is only after you really come out, and you have to show that you're not a minority anymore. And I know it's a different experience when you're coming out to a larger chunk of people, but I think there is a lot of power in that. A lot of voices have come out since 2009 and the verdict when it went the other way. Right. Since that to 2013, we saw a general rise in coming out stories, couples posting photos together, and that is empowering in its own way. So I think we need more of that in the current time and age, because again we're fighting a regime that does not care about us. When the Supreme Court asked the government for an opinion on Section 377 this time around, they said, do what you want to do, we don't care. That's the tone that they're conveying every time. So I wonder how much longer can we live like this in denial.
Exactly. I'll come back later to this whole question of where the LGBT movement is at right now in India. But before that, I again want to go back, and you've spoken about your coming out to your friends and how they reacted, and you felt accepted and it was all worth it. But when it came to your parents, how did that process work out?
So I was doing open mics almost every alternate day back then. That was in 2014, 15. And I was once you get into this comedy scene, and you have to really invest your time, and I would pick jobs that would allow me to leave early at 7:30ish and then run to a mic and do 1 or 2 open mics in the evening. So every night I would go and I would do this material about what's it like coming out, and one advice I got as a comic was to stick to the material I'm doing for the first 6 months. Do that same 4 minutes everywhere, so you can understand how that evolves automatically, what funny bits remain and stuff like that. And for the first 6 months, I was mainly bombing with that material, so it became very difficult for me to get spots and stuff like that. And a lot of older comics like Sapan Varma, Kunal Kamra, and Zakir and Biswa would advise me to stick to it. Don't change your narrative just because some jokes are not working, because you have a really strong idea of how you want to build this material. So I would do that. So from there, it became easier for me to channel my energy into writing better material. And you transition from the 4-minute phase to 6 minutes and 8 minutes and then 15 and stuff like that. So I was working at Hive. I was writing comedy. I was doing some writing work on the side as well. All of this was going well, and I was creating queer content, so to say, on my own. We would do a small mic called the Rainbow Mic in Hive, which was calling all the queer contestants to come and do whatever they wanted. So some would recite poetry, storytelling, dancing, slam poetry, comedy as well. So all kinds of queer performers were given a chance to do their work. So that's when I found oh my god, there's an entire little under circuit that we're building, and we're not even realizing that this is a movement on its own, And there was not much happening. As I said, there was always the gay party scene, but culturally for the queers in Bombay and other metropolitan cities, not much was happening as much as I wanted to, see. So we were doing the small little thing, and from there I began again, questioning whether sooner or later will they find out, because I now had half an hour of material about coming out and to my friends and homophobia. And
was any of it on YouTube or anything?
Not yet. There was only some bits of it here and there. Somebody lost my footage also, which was, I think, thankful, because back then I was not ready for that footage to come out. And there was another comic called Nick Pillow, who's a white guy who's been teaching drama in Bombay for the longest time. So somebody told me he's also a queer comic. So we came together and did a show called Homo's Odyssey, which again a pun on Homer's Odyssey.
You like puns?
I love puns. And so Homo's Odyssey became this 2-person show where we would do a lot of little acts together. We would do small sketches interspersed with our stand-up as well. And might I say, the first stand-up comedy kiss on stage.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
amazing.
We do have photos to prove, but we can't put it online. But we went there. We actually wanted to take it a little more how much can people see 2 men kissing on stage and be uncomfortable, that sort of stuff. And then Nick moved on with his life. He's now engaged and going to get married. And then I was okay, now I have to do my show. I have to still proceed with my material. And I ended up doing Coming Out Soon, which was a trial show. And that was again...
Which morphed into The Good Child, which I saw
eventually. But throughout this, I remember Sharon, who's the co-founder of The Hive and now Cuckoo Club, I was talking to her and she's like, what, dude, 2 years of comedy and you've been doing so much work with the LGBT stuff. When will you tell your parents? And I'm like, that's a legit question, Sharon. I can't imagine. And hence, as I told you, I had to come out on different levels. So after engineering, I quit and became a writer. And then after that, I became an atheist, as I told you. So there were already too many blows I was giving out to my family, which was staunchly conservative. Both my sisters are married.
Tell me about these different blows. How did they go down?
Always dramatically. It's it's not easy. Like, I remember the way I left L&T was like, which the company I was hired to work for.
You're an engineer.
I'm an engineer, telecom engineer by qualification. But I got placed in Larsen & Toubro Infotech, which is IT, and I don't know IT. And they were trying to like teach me programming and coding, and I'm just dyslexic when it comes to like coding. So I left after 2 weeks. I still got a small little paycheck, and I was like, I came home and mom's like, tomorrow what time do you have to go to work? I'm like, I'm not going. She's like, why? I'm like, I just quit. I did not want to do this. And then just like became like an entire silent period for my father. Was like no talking for 3 months, and just like cold-hearted, like, stone cold treatment. My mom was still like, have you figured out what you want to do and all that? And I remember the last day of, not the last day, but like they had to give us a test to pass us and see how we can fare for 3 months, and then they give us jobs, right? So when everybody else was studying, I was studying and writing a poem, which I called Across the Bridge, which was like a very metaphorical look.
Did you have it on you?
I do, 1 second. So this is a very rhyme to rhyme kind of poem, but here's what it says. There's a boat in the river at the edge of the ridge. The boatman beckons to take you across the bridge. You've heard about the other side, you know it's bright and lovely. You stand at the edge and ponder if it's worth being sad and lonely. You make a decision, you take the leap. You land on the boat, the edge though steep. The currents are strong, the journey is tough. The water is coarse, it's choppy, it's rough. You're scared to cross now, you risk a glance. Your friends and family say you've missed your chance. The chance to stick to the regular show. The chance to be ordinary and cheat your core. The belief it surges and so does the wave. You don't need to look back, you're far too brave. The storm descends, the boat sails calm. The bridge it passes, you're befuddled with charm. The other shore arrives, you begin to strut. You know now the journey was tough but worth. The loneliness has vanished, you're relieved and glad. The past won't haunt you now, the past you once had.
Lovely. And you were writing this while during that Larsen & Toubro...
study break. And then they threw me out, as they should have. And then, like, they didn't talk to me for a while. My mom and dad were really, like, upset about it. I just looked up, like, writing jobs available for the lowest amount of money I could work for. And I got a content writing job, which was, like, nice. And, I had to write product descriptions for, like, Amazon and Jabang and all these websites. So that was fun, not too extensive. Like, they would give us, like, some 20 products and they'd, like, write about this. So I would, like, finish my quota every night. And that's when I started like going home late at night and meeting people with different kinds of stuff to offer, and that's when I would like be enlightened a little bit, like traveling home at night on YouTube, like going to the weirder side of YouTube to find comedy and look at like a lot of improv work. So that's when I discovered Bill Hicks and George Carlin and Wanda Sykes and all these stand-up comedians I'd never heard of, but like I would love their material because they were like so weird and edgy, and hence I decided to like go and do an open mic at some point in my life, and that's when I ended up at like Hive and did my first open mic.
So we'll continue to explore your journey in comedy and your journey in coming out to your parents right after a short commercial break.
Cool.
So this week on IVM, there's a lot to look forward to for our listeners. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We have an interview lined up with the young actor Ishan Khattar on Cyrus Says. This conversation is about his foray into acting and living up to high expectations. On Simplified is the 100th episode, which we recorded live at Dulali, featuring guests Amit Varma and Varun Dubirala. And for all of those looking to step into the food and hospitality business, the podcast that should definitely make your priority list is the Kolaba Cartel. This week, there's an important conversation taking place between Gauri, Pankil, Abhishek, and myself about restaurant investments, who the ideal investor for a restaurant would be, and more. Also catch Paisa Vaisa, where Anupam talks to Prashant Thakur of Anurag Property Consultants about real estate basics like buying, renting, and selling property. On the Vishal Gondal Show, Vishal speaks to Yashraj Akashi, someone responsible for curating the TEDx conference in India. On the Pragati podcast, Pawan and Hamsini are joined by strategic communications expert Soren Dayton to discuss how the ecosystem of Washington, D.C. has changed since Donald Trump became the president. On Puliyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh discuss Pakistan's tryst with the military jihadi complex. We're also looking to hire a producer, a social media intern, and a graphic designer. So write to us at jobs@indusvox.com if you want to come work with us. And with that, let's continue with your show.
Welcome back to the Seen and the Unseen, listeners. I'm with Navin Noronha of Keeping It Queer and the Good Child fame. So Navin, we were talking about your coming out to your parents in phases, and your first coming out has nothing to do with your sexual identity, but simply that you didn't want to follow the conventional route and be of an engineer and wanted to be a writer and stuff like that. And how did that kind of proceed? How did they come to terms with it?
It was a little difficult because there was more money in engineering, obviously.
Yeah.
So I had to make enough money on the side to make sure that I could make ends meet. And the first job did offer a decent package, and from there I also would do DMCing on the weekends, as I said. So that would give me some more money. So overall I was taking care of the house now slowly, and hence there was still a certain level of attachment to the family, but they were constantly aware that I was not making as well, and they would keep constantly, planting it in my head again and again that, hey, if you were doing this, you would have been happier. Maybe you can go back to it. And I was like, no, I've left that life behind entirely. I was happy doing what I was doing. So it was for the longest time, I did not emote so much at home, which I also regret now because I could have been more abrupt about it, and I just tried to placate everybody at the same time and make sure I could hold all the strings together, because one of the main reasons coming out is difficult in India, because what if they throw me out and I have to then be on the streets? So I just have to make sure that I can earn enough money at the same time and take care of myself if that whole phase happens where I have to go out. And then the second coming out happened around the same time, because I was so away from the church for a while that I did not want to go back to it and be in the same environment with the same kind of homophobic, because religion is kind of very handy when it comes to homophobia. People start quoting lines and stuff like that, which I don't want to deal with. So proactively I stopped going to church, and that was a very hate-filled period in my house because they could not take that at all. I was raised in such a strong household that for me, not going to church was the biggest sin I'd ever committed in my entire life.
So looking back retrospectively, would you say you were ever a believer in God per se, or you got so involved in the church because of the community and cultural aspects of it?
That's the latter. I think we eventually end up saying that we believe in God and we love Him and everything. But older I grew, obviously there was a more sense of, oh wait, what if there's a supreme being that we don't know how to put a name to? And then you will see all the killings that are happening in the name of religion, and you read a little bit and you understand that, oh, all of this is kind of made up and the Crusades happened. So when you would think about all of these things, you'd be oh wait, let's take a backtracking mechanism here and be the main reason you liked it so much because everybody's just so into you and they all praise you and they all want to make the best out of what they're given, sort of. So our church annual parties and family gatherings and all of that were pretty famous because you would pay $60 and then get a raffle ticket for Easter, and at the same time eat free biryani and shit like that. So they keep you in the system like that,
Don't call free biryani shit like that.
Oh yeah.
I've been on a keto diet all of this year. I'd do anything for a biryani.
Me too. I'm going tonight to have some. Would you?
I'm afraid I can't. Don't send me pictures. That's all I ask.
It'll be on Instagram tomorrow morning.
I don't follow your
in
Instagram anymore.
So yeah, it was good to have that system, but I yearned for more, as I said. It's so much easier to understand that sometimes all the hard work you do has a payoff instead of people just applauding you and telling you you're doing a good job. So when I started deviating from the church, it was really difficult for my family to digest the fact by default. It was the biggest travesty, and I was so now nobody's business.
Is there a moment where you announce to them that there is a clean cut between you and the church? You're an atheist now.
There was. My mom and my sister were at home and they were trying to really argue and debate about why I'm not believing in all of this. I would not even step out of my room when they would start praying, and my family is such, for 30 minutes before the midnight I'm saying, before dinner every night, we spend 30 minutes praying, kneeling down and raising our hands in the air, kind of crazy stuff. So I would just stop participating in that, and my sister was tell me why, and I'd be look at the whole way it's skewed, and look at all this pedophilia, and look at all how the church is taking money from people, not helping them, all of that. Why is there so much disparity in African kids and Indian kids? We are so entitled, all of that. And my mom was for 5 days more, go to church and try it out. I'm for 5 days, Mom, you try to be an atheist. You stop believing in God and stop going to church. So how can you make me do something I don't want to do? And I'm touche. Right now, that's exactly what's happening. And she was oh wait. Then she actually took a step back and she realized she was doing the same thing to me, which I wanted her to do for a change. And then she was a little more calmer after that. She was like, okay, I think it's your call. But my dad, again, like, my dad always goes to the extreme. He does not talk to me, but also does not, he pulls the strings from the background, basically. He'll talk to my mom about something and he'll now her, and then her head is hurting because of my dad constantly, bickering with her. So I was feeling like I'm causing all this stress in my family. I might as well move out now itself because it's easier to, like, just vanish from their lives. Again, a very stupid, impulsive teenage decision. I'm not even a teenager back then, I was 23. But I felt like going away from the house for some time would have been helpful. But it did not help at all. Like, they were crying more than they were usually doing that. And my dad would, like... My dad picked up his phone and called me, and I knew, like, shit's going down because he hardly calls me. And he's like, you've just, like, gone and haven't told us where you are and what's happening. So after, like, 15 days, I finally got back home, and that's when I sat my mom down and I told her first. And there was a plan in action where it was, like, her birthday approaching, so we would not tell the entire family until her birthday, so we could, like, keep this between mother and son, and then slowly tell the rest of the family in a more, civilized manner when they all gathered together. So I could also do my piece and be like, hey, let me desensitize you, instead of you all just, like, assuming things. But my mom could not keep it inside, and
this is your third coming out of saying that.
Yeah. And this was the final official for me, like, being openly gay sort of thing. And I was like, the whole world knows, everybody's cool with it. I just want you all to be okay with it.
And you've prepared them, like, first you're a writer, then you're an atheist, and what can get worse? And your dad is thinking it's okay, it can't get worse. And then
it does. It does get so worse. And so, like, I was expecting my mom to not tell anybody, and I remember it was a Monday, so we had Monday open.
How did your mom react?
So she was very chill. Like, she just, like, looked into the distance and, like, I've heard about people. And she told me about one of her family relatives who was gay and married a woman and then would still go and have sex with men. And when his wife finally found out, she lost her marbles. Like, she literally went insane. They had to put her in an asylum. And I was just like, do you want that future for me, Mom? Because if I marry a woman tomorrow, as per your wishes, I'll end up, like, not satisfying her, and she'll then, like, blame us and, all that racket. And a lot of people do live that lifestyle. And she was like, you know what, like, it's okay, I understand, I'm cool of... I can live with the fact that there are people who are gay out there. But it's just difficult because I think you're my son, and how will you lead a life like that? And that's why I was like, it's okay, because I've told a lot of people and they're all chill with it and they're all, like, supporting and really understanding. I just want you all to be in my corner. But I don't know how she took it that night. She mulled over it, because when I told her it was cool, because I went to an open mic directly after that moment, and I went and declared at the open mic that for 2 years I've been trying to come out to my family, and tonight it actually happened. I have footage of that, and people were applauding, and it was pretty good. Karan Gill was hosting that night. He was really happy. Like, he went and joked about how dreams come true at open mics and stuff like that. And it was a really positive moment in my life for a change. But the very next day, I felt like there was some amount of disdain in my house. The air hung very, like, serious, and my mom and dad and my sister were both, like, staring at me with intense, like, like, I actually went bald the same week I came out, which was not the smartest move, because now they had 2 reasons to hate me, because I had, like...
Well done, tactically brilliant.
Well, at least my hair came back. I'm still gay that way.
Yeah.
So they were, like, not getting what I was trying to tell them. And then I called my friend, who's also a gay activist, and he was like, if you want to come home and stay with us, you can sort the situation out, don't worry. But I would say stay back, talk to them. So this was from a Monday to Friday. It was just constant, like, should I leave, should I stay, should I leave, should I stay?
And how did your dad react?
He was, again, stone cold. He just, like, he goes into his whole...
He wouldn't talk to you.
Like, he goes into a gargoyle mode where he just, like, ignores my existence altogether. Mm-hmm. And, like, again, all the talking happens to my mother, right? Mm-hmm. And hence, when I came out, he was, again, like, not understanding. So I used Amir Khan's Satyamev Jayate episode on LGBT rights to show it to them that, hey, there are more people like me. Watch this video. Amir Khan's cool about it, so why can't you be cool about it? Mm-hmm. So... that weekend, that Saturday or Sunday, I showed them the video, and then they softened up a little bit. So a whole week of, like...
Softened up as in...
it's okay that you're gay. They just finally said that line. Like, we understand it's okay, but don't do something wrong, was the idea. Because my mom was like, okay, there's still people who are gay, just immediately they have AIDS. Like, that's how it works. I'm like, no. But then you have to, again, pick your battles every day, one at a time. And I decided to come out first and then talk about the other stuff in life.
In some sense, I mean, you spoke about this a lot, and the whole narrative was very moving in the show that you did, The Good Child. And one of the things that kind of struck me there was that, up till this point, you could say your parents brought you up, but now suddenly you were bringing them up by revealing all these aspects of yourselves and forcing them to grow, to kind of accept you as you are.
And a lot of growing up happens between these conversations, because around the same time, my mom's main concern that year was that while I came out to her, my sister, who also had an autistic kid, was diagnosed autistic that year. Oh, sure. So it was like a double blow. She felt almost and in a very weird way, like my sister's kids' autism kind of helped her cope with the fact that, hey, I did not have a choice in how I chose my orientation, because the kid did not choose how he would have a social anxiety in life. So even though it's weird that it's a mental illness and orientation are not the same, not the same level, I still chose to be like, hey, at least it's helping her understand and deal with it. You can't be very politically correct at the same time with your parents, because there's always going to be some level of weirdness to it. Like, even now when I shave my face, she's like, you know what, I like you better with a beard because that looks more manly on you. Here you look more effeminate. I'm like, Mom, how can you say such amazing things and weird things at the same time? But that's how mothers are. They are just like, they're concerned about you, but they'll take it in their stride eventually by just like letting them love you for who you are again. So that's my main point, that if you don't stop pretending, you'll never know how your family's going to like you. And
And does that normalcy extend to, for example, like, have you ever taken any of the men you were dating home, or any of your gay activist friends, and how does the family react to that?
Well, they've met some of my gay friends, but I've never brought anybody home. I think they're still like a little far away, and like they know that I'm doing comedy and I talk about this and I give interviews and it's all over the news so they know for a fact that there's some level of publicity that goes with my work, and I think it's okay because I tell them I'm doing it for the right reasons, and eventually my mom and I do talk about like when I'm going out with, like, what's it like to have lived inside the closet and outside the closet, and this whole conversation goes on for a while, but I'm still not like seriously going to take her to meet a guy I'm dating and vice versa.
And for a gay person as opposed to a straight person, the process of finding love is very difficult. Finding love, finding companionship, and so on. Straight men do it through, whatever, the normal socializing you do when you like someone and you hit on them. And if it's Bollywood, then you Eve tease them till they give in.
Yeah.
But for someone like you, it's a very fraught process, because you might keep bumping into homophobia in different places. And, how did that kind of process work out where you start finding companionship and that kind of friendship?
So there's obviously online dating, which has helped a lot of people meet cool people around the world. And that's what I found. Like, my past 3 relationships have been of 3 different apps. So that way I've been like meeting enough number of people overall. In fact, I made like a list for my ex when I was dating him, that these are the men I've slept with in my past, and beyond this there won't be anybody else but you.
Wow.
A very naive move, because there was the list continues to this day. But I
tell every new lover this.
I do. I'm very on the face sort of, because like it is like when you're going to the whole world of gay dating, it's very easy to get sex, because it's just like it's that easy. It's like nobody knows, no one keeps a track of it. The thrill of it is what actually excites a lot of people. Like, it's all behind closed doors and everything, so it's easy to get laid. But then when someone says translate this love outside, where you can walk on the street, on the pavement with your partner's hand in your hand, or go on dates and stuff like that, it immediately becomes a problem, because then you're acting like 2 bros on a date who won't sit on the same side of the table, who won't feed each other, the cutesy things you want to do, because you have to act a certain way. So again, like, this happens because as soon as you want to show your love, it becomes too cumbersome for some people, and that's how most relationships don't work out in the long run. People online will tell you that they're just looking for hookups and not for like longevity. And again, you just like go from one guy to the other, hoping that this one works out. So that was like for the longest time. And I was very gullible in my early 20s, I feel like, because I was so brought up on the idea of a Mills and Boons-esque love story where the whole world is like, behind you, and you're like riding on the beach with like a horse or whatever. Not the guy, but
riding on the beach with a horse.
Riding a horse on the beach, and a guy also.
Right. Okay.
So I had a very rom-com-esque look at life, and didn't work out really well because nobody was willing to come out of the closet even, like, to meet me halfway.
I think every woman is looking for a man like you, who looks at the world like that. So,
but yeah, eventually we all end up being jaded, so it's cool. Like, like right now at 26, 27, I'm like...
But are you jaded, or when you meet the next man, will you again be a romantic?
I am dating a very young kid right now.
Okay.
I'm dating a 20-year-old.
Wow.
Who used to stalk me before I got to know who he was. Basically, he watched me live at a stand-up show and then was following up with my social media work. And then finally got the courage to say, hey, I like you. And I met him and it's kind of cute. So, yeah. So it's like, in a weird way, like, I didn't have to resort to like online dating to find this person because they were already there in my life before I realized it, And hence, it's cool to like go out and associate, go to parties and situations. But again, my brand with parties again is that they all just like come together and couples have a good time, but people who are looking for love or for sex that night end up meeting each other and hooking up for that one night. And I sometimes end up being worried about like what's the health situation, and you don't know because you meet someone randomly and that night you want to have sex, but then a lot of people do not tell you about what their STD situation is and how do you know that, so you have to like worry about that as well. So a lot of things go on in your mind when you're going out there. It's not just like you go and meet the man of your dreams overnight. It's a trial and error method, and again, like, get checked every 2 or 3 months.
So I think in around 2007, when I was writing a column for Mint, I'd written this piece called the Matunga Racket. A friend of mine, Vikram Doctor, had put me on to something that used to happen where cops would basically go online and they'd hook up with gay men pretending to be gay men themselves and call them to Matunga station. And when the person landed up in Matunga station, they'd grab him and take him to his ATM machine and take out whatever cash and basically blackmail the guy using 377. I mean, like all bad laws, it was a rent-seeking mechanism for them.
Yeah.
Does that kind of thing still happen?
It still happens. My friend who went to Delhi last week got extorted by 2 dudes.
Wow.
Like, even if it's not cops, it's other men only who are trying to run a racket online. And because Section 377 is so highly spoken about, people use it all the time to like extort money out of people. And, they'll rob you, they'll beat you up, they'll come to your hotel room. Because, again, like, the trust factor is so weird on these online dating apps. People don't show their face. And you've seen me joke about that as well when I speak about Grindr, is that, like, people do not want to show that they're gay on Grindr. And if that person is on Grindr, it's because they are gay.
Right.
Unless they're trying to extort you, and they can't extort you for being gay in this country. Unless they catch you in the act of carnal intercourse, there's no way they can send you to jail for being gay.
So you should really just brazen it out. But I think the main fear of most of the people who get caught is that their family will be told they might not have come out.
Exactly. But then again, that's the system it's feeding itself,
Right.
We don't come out because we're scared about like what the society will say. Society will say something because we're not coming out. It's a vicious cycle of...
So if you just come out and you can do it fearlessly, then
exactly. Then they won't say, oh, you're gay, I'll tell your family. Sure, go ahead. I told my family before you. I beat you to it. Give me money now. That's how you extort the money out of them. I don't know, because I've found so much comfort in telling people that I can't imagine living that kind of suffocated life. We're trying to like meet all your life's goals at the same time, worry about this constantly, that you can't tell your family or they'll find out someday and then how will they react. Living with that guilt is so difficult sometimes that just saying it out loud helps you just vent out so much of the aggression that you've lived with your entire life. Like with my mom, at every stage in my life, from the point I was 15 when I could reaffirm my thoughts, that thing was always there on my Adam's apple, like right here. I would hold on to it and not tell her, and I just regret wish I had told her earlier, so everything that happened in my life afterwards would have been much more easier to deal with, I could have gone into the arts much easily instead of having to struggle and try to please them at every level. That's what we told as Indian kids, right? Just please your parents at every level. But if you just come out and be who you are and just tell them like from the very beginning that you do not care about the world's opinion, because you can do what you want to do in your life eventually, and who you want to do in your life eventually, you'll find that kind of happiness. And I think it's for everybody in this community to take that control of that life, because as soon as you let these powers extort you for something that's not wrong, then you yourself becoming a part of the problem, right? Because you're allowing them to...
You're allowing yourself to be a victim, basically, which you don't have to.
You don't have to.
So I'm just thinking aloud here. It strikes me that for most of us, and certainly for me, sexuality is something that is incidental. I happen to be heterosexual and that's it, but it doesn't shape me in any other way than that. But would it be the case that for you and for maybe for other gay people, that your sexuality does shape you in much deeper ways, because that whole struggle of coming to terms with what you are and bringing it out to the world consumes you and makes you who you are?
It does. Like almost every other gay friend I have has some level of social anxiety. They live with depression and they self-doubt a lot. It's a very in-depth problem because of living with so much denial and not being able to come out can do a lot of things wrong for you internally, because you just end up crying every night. And I am not even generalizing here, because I know a lot of friends who are going through the same thing over and over again. Exactly why there's so many suicide cases and so many all these high fun situations happen, because people push themselves and try to get the best out of life when they can't really put label to it, and that kind of lifestyle kind of ends up very tragically sometimes. And at 17 I was very suicidal. I wanted to just end my life and be done with it, because it seemed like an easier option. So I think we have to talk about mental illness also very profoundly when it comes to gay rights, because there's a lot of extremism there as well, and we're not really controlling it properly, and that's why it's, I think, a problem that is associated with coming out or with growing up gay, is that you suppress so much to an extent that you use every kind of method to deal with that. And I've seen a lot of people in the community slowly giving up and passing away in their own stride, how they ended their lives because they could not deal with the worries of how the world looks.
And the tragic part is that it's the fault of society or the state, and whoever's fault it is, it's not their fault, they're victims. It's in a sense, every suicide is a murder in a manner of speaking. Let's then, move on from here to talk about the LGBT community, and I'm sort of, if I can show quote marks around the word community, because I often don't understand such terms. I mean, the way I look at the world is we're all sort of just individuals, and we form communities around our interests or our identities or whatever, but they don't. What is this queer community?
So queer community is mainly a stronghold for a lot of people, because, as I said, a lot of parents do not accept their kids as they are, so they find their own families, and hence the need for a queer community to be born, because if it dates back to the American Stonewall period, right, where a lot of people would come together and party, and even though they had varied interests, for example, some had drag queens coming in, some had lesbian butch women coming in, some had gay men coming in to hook up, the normalcy was found that they were all the same kind of heathens, right? And hence they would come together and party, and they would try to, again, back in the day, extort money. Cops would charge in on them. The Stonewall riots happened. And any riot that happens because of a community is because of the understanding that they've all suffered from the same problems. And if you were a black lesbian back in the 50s, you were already down the drain, because you were the lowest rung when it comes to understanding. If you're a white gay man, you still have some privilege, but if you're a black lesbian woman, you have a different kind of privilege, which is not afforded to you. So for them, fighting the supreme power became a common thing, and hence the LGBT community around the world is fighting the same thing, finding the commonness in being who you are, at the same time also finding love and acceptance within the community. And now it's where it is,
it's a community, therefore, which is born not out of the identity you're born into, but it's a community of choice and necessity. And is it therefore stronger for that reason?
It is, because the commonness in the voice and the power with which the community hits back, because it does have the most creative individuals overall. And if you look at the ad campaigns that have gone around the world in the past few years with regards to finding gay voices and giving them rights, you'll find a very innovative way of storytelling, because it's not just about fighting for rights, but also about the right to love, right to find the same kind of housing that everybody else has. So when you look at it from an emotional level, gay marriages make more sense, because then if you can't live with the person you love the most, then how would you even live? And hence the whole community became more stronger in the mid 2009 when Obama was and believe it or not, everywhere around the world, America does influence the thought pattern a lot when it comes to
absolutely.
All these liberalist movements. And so then when it moved on to Europe as well, it became much easier for them to mimic these movements and, allow people to vote for the right thing. And if you look at like the ad campaign Ireland did to like get parents to come out and vote for their kids' favor, it's because like it's a matter of love. And when you boil it down to love, it's all kind of coming together already. So that's why the LGBT community has been ever inclusive, because now it's gone to QIA, and intersex, asexual, queer couples are also like a part of the whole gamut now, and we are just getting to the tip of the iceberg now, is what I feel.
And in India, how strong is
it's pretty strong now. Like in Bombay and mainly metro cities like Delhi, Bangalore and Kolkata and Chennai, so they have like a lot of collectives coming together. A lot of people do a lot of different things. Some people organize parties. Some people do actual donation work. Some people do research work. And you have like AIDS centers to help people diagnose themselves, and research centers again for that very purpose. So a lot of things are happening. In Bombay, when you do the Pride, like every year the number of people participating increases along with the allies. So from last year where it was 10,000, it went to 15,000 this year. And it's growing every year.
Because I was struck by what you said earlier about how your first few relationships came by because of online dating. And obviously the need for online dating therefore seems to indicate that the natural ecosystem within the real world where you meet other gay people simply wasn't that large. So you had to do online dating. That's the only way you could meet new people. Is that something that's changed? Is the ecosystem larger? And very specifically, if say a young 17-year-old or 18-year-old gay person is listening to this podcast right now and he's like, I want to go out there and meet more people like me, what's he got to do?
So you have to like look up the local...
she got to do, I mean...
They have to basically look out for the local queer center that they can approach. If you're in Bombay, you have the Humsafar Trust, which is in Wakola. They do a lot of community-based fun open mics, and they do like a lot of Friday evening get-togethers, while at the same time helping people get diagnosed and stuff like that. So like you'll always have a lot of these queer centers and collectives and open mics and activities to participate in. Don't go with the intention of hooking up to all of these, obviously. My whole thing is that first go and learn the community, meet people, understand different behaviors, lifestyles, and explore that side of it. And then if you meet someone organically, amazing. There are parties that associate with just like getting you to drink and have a good time, and a lot of things happen at these parties. If that's your thing, then be about 21 and then have a good time. Don't be 17 and go to these parties, because then your image of the community will be different than what you have to perceive. And go to a Pride, go to a local bookstore.
And you'd say, in a sense, that you'd go to these for the same reason that as a kid you went to church, to find that sense of community rather than, any specific...
So in that way, nothing's changed. So.
You're still the altar boy.
I'm still the altar boy, but this time on the other end of the spectrum.
And how has popular culture changed through this time? Like, when you were a kid in the late 90s, the early 2000s, like from whatever, and one thing that is pretty obvious about Bollywood is that is the tokenism. Sometimes they'll put a token gay out there, or sometimes they'll have a gay for comic effect and, just, perpetuate all those harmful stereotypes. And it's very rare that they actually... like some of the most beautiful movies I've seen coming out of Hollywood in recent years, right from Brokeback Mountain to Moonlight, do show gay love in such a beautiful way. But they have, apart from maybe I can offhand remember Kapoor and Sons, but how has popular culture adapted to this?
Bollywood is still grasping, at its kind of roots, because remember Dostana? Like I remember Dostana happened at a very formative year in my life where I was like still in the church trying to come out to my church friends. But then we went to watch this movie at Gaiety Galaxy together, and I was just like very taken aback, because I'm like, they're not even gay, they're just like pretending to be gay too.
I'm just happy you didn't make a pun about Gaiety Galaxy. Continue.
Oh yeah, I'll let that go this time. But there is a magazine called Gay Galaxy, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a publication for the gays. They were all like enjoying the movie, and I was like, this sounds so wrong as a movie. It's just like pandering, and it's not actually talking about gay rights. It's just like two men acting gay to get a girl, that kind of stuff. So I would just like let it go, and that's why when I was exposed to Western media, it was easier. So if you watch Will and Grace, or if you watch Modern Family, if you watch Queer as Folk, then you get an idea of how it's a part of their culture, And since I was born in the 90s, right? So when I got to 2000s, the situation was much better for the queers around India. Like, there were parties and there were associative events happening in scarcity, but now, because it's been like spoken about so much, and like everybody wants to get on board this whole ship and be an ally and get on the bandwagon of, you know, being cool because you're pro-gay, it's very common now. So it's not such a rarity as it was when I was like 17 or 18. Now I can go to a queer event every evening or every weekend almost now. So it's a pretty chill situation.
Right, and you know, you've been doing this very interesting show, Keeping It Queer, for quite a long time. I think your season 2 just got over, right?
Yep.
And what you do in this show for my listeners, and I recommend to my listeners that they check it out at ivmpodcast.com. Just look under shows, look for Keeping It Queer. It's a fantastic show. While doing this show, what are the sort of insights that you gained about what in a sense was your community itself?
I think that there's still a lot of sexism in the queer community itself. Like, it still becomes a man show at the end, so the gay men think that they're entitled in some way. Okay. And so there's still a lot of like toxic masculinity and, you know, a lot of these behavioral
within the gay community.
And like, they look down upon lesbians and trans women, who mainly are the foremost leaders in the community. And I've really ended up, because when I was growing up also, like, you know, the sight of a trans person begging for money at the signal or in the train would scare me, because I was brought up in that kind of mentality. But the most humane touch that I've had, like, you know, the most human interactions I've had after being a part of the community is with trans people, and understanding their stories has been like the most poignant moment in my life. Like, I've spoken to so many people, not only on record on Keeping It Queer, but like in real life otherwise as well. Just the fact that they have gone through so much more than I could have ever gone makes me understand the need for the struggle, the need for talking about it on a bigger platform and getting to normalize this conversation, because they have just been mistreated everywhere, you know, like with jobs, with medical healthcare, with their own families. They're thrown out, they find their own communities. And despite people being aware that, you know, India comes from a very strong culturally, heritage-wise, we are very strong in terms of respecting our trans people. They were put in the uppermost rungs of like the king's sabha. So like, what happened and how did we go wrong? And the understanding of that helped me empathize a lot more with the trans community of this country.
And you were, of course, extremely fortunate, not just sort of in your background relatively, but also that you had comedy and your art as an outlet to which you could turn, your writing as an outlet. And a lot of people don't have that, and things are tough for them. And through the course of doing this show, you've spoken to so many different kinds of people. So at some level, for you, when you think about the struggle that your life involves, does it involve not just the personal struggle of coming to terms with who you are and doing what you have to do and the personal struggles of your art, but also this larger struggle where, you want to make India more progressive in this sense and sort of advance the cause of the queer community, as it were?
Yeah, and also like to tell them that, hey, listen to these love stories of these people, you know. People, when they come to my show, I don't tell them like, oh, we're going to be preachy about this. Just tell me what happened in your life. So they'll be like, oh, I had a crush on this person. I was a girl and I had a crush on a girl. And then she fell in love with me. And then we had the longest dating time, you know. And that makes me so happy, because they're not pretending to be anybody else than who they are, and telling me a story that would happen in anybody else's life. So the idea was always to create conversations which are still normalizing the whole idea that we also have lives. It's just that we don't flash it too much because we're afraid that you won't like it. But maybe in this way, when you listen to our stories, you'll like it. You'll understand that we do come with a certain sense of fear because of how we are treated in society. So that's why we need all these stories to come out and say that there's a promise for a better tomorrow. Even though it's going to be very rigorous and slow, we still have hope that it'll get just better. And that's what, like, last year's Pride was, it gets better, was the theme of the Pride. And it was,
that's a lovely line.
Yeah, so it was so amazing, because I went to the Pride with my microphone and spoke to so many people. Right. So we did a queer edition for the Pride that year. And hence, all these stories, when I was setting out to put them together, it was like a audio journal, so to say, of these stories of people.
And where is it? Where can people listen to this?
It's on ivmpodcast.com only. So it's like... Right. So that's the whole idea, that I want to have all these people who are out to talk about it. So when a kid looks up for it, when they are discovering queer identities and everything, they'll have some kind of research work to go back to, which is again like a very Indian voice, you know, because as I said, I went to men from around the world to understand what they went through. But the situation is very differently perceived in India. So I wanted to give listeners a chance to understand the queer Indian identity from the podcast perspective.
And is there any of this happening in the languages itself, or is just sort of English?
I do speak to people in Marathi and Hindi as well on the show.
Oh, right. Okay.
But again, my language skills are mostly stronger in English, so we stuck to that. But there's also a lot of insight into what's it like to come from different backgrounds and to have different identities also. From around the country, that too. I've spoken to people on Skype, and we had Alok Ved Menon. They are a spoken word poet from America, femme and very proudly. So they actually face a lot of homophobia in America when they walk on the streets. So it was important to get their story when they came down to India. I kind of found them, and Shakti and Alok came and they did a great episode with me. So hence I feel like when you go back to understanding why you wanted to do this, there has to be a purpose to this, right? So when we finally got all these stories and I look back at it and people find me online and message me saying that, hey, I heard your podcast, it helped me cope with so much. It means a lot to me eventually that I did not go on a savior mission at all. I was just like, I hope that someone did this for me and this is what I'm going to do for them.
Had you heard something like this when you were 15 or 16?
I would have been so much calmer and I would have been okay coming out sooner. But it didn't happen, so...
That's amazing. Let me I've taken a lot of your time. Let me end with a dual question that is almost a cliche now, but I ask all guests of my show on whatever subject they're talking about, is that what makes you despair and what makes you hopeful about the future of gay rights in India?
So the ignorance that we still have in the country with regards to gay rights, when I talk to people about Section 377, they don't have any idea what that law is. Some people don't know a gay friend also. They don't have any kind of common...
Or if they do, they don't know that they know a gay friend.
Exactly. And that
which is doubly tragic.
Yeah. So that is a lot of despair there, because I hope that everybody gets to feel the way I get to feel, and I'm entitled and I'm happy that way. But not many people can afford to come out so easily, which is making me sadder. And what makes me hopeful is that there's a very strong ally movement in this country. People, women especially, who have felt the same kind of, the society's rebuked them on a certain level. So they understand. So I've made such great friendship with women who are so admirable in their own way, and they go out of their way to help me out, deal with my own mental anxiety. And
because they're also victims and they're fighting society in their own ways.
So I found the strongest women in this country have been my strongest allies in some way or the other. And even men who go on the femme side, I find them so adorable in their own way. People, whenever they tell you that whole Baila tag is gone from my head entirely now. Now I look at men who are flamboyant and I lose my shit and I become one of them, because I've always been an expressive kid, but I would hide that to become a part of society. But when I'm dancing with them or when I'm being a very stereotypical gay character, where I'd be like, okay girl, don't talk like that, swinging our fingers and everything, snapping around, I feel happy. There's hope that I can talk like that one day and be okay in society.
That's beautiful. I learned a lot talking to you, and I think we just touched the surface of what we could talk about, but it's already been more than an hour. So thanks a lot for coming on this show.
Thank you so much, Amit. It was an honor.
If you enjoyed listening to the show, do go on to ivmpodcast.com and look for Keeping It Queer. The 2 seasons of it are over, and there are some outstanding, very moving episodes, very funny episodes. So do check them out. Also, look for Navin's show, The Good Child, coming in a city near you or in your city soon. Tickets available on Book My Show. He'll be in Kolkata on September 9th and Goa on September 16th. If you're there, watch the show. If you're not there, fly down. You can also follow Navin on Twitter at House of Noronha, and you can follow me at Amit Varma, AmitVarma. You can browse past episodes of The Seen and the Unseen on seenunseen.in. Thank you for listening.
How aware do you think you are of your laws and rights? Do you look up to laws when you are caught up in situations? Do you know what your rights are when you're stuck somewhere bad? Well, here's a show that can help you move an inch closer to being aware of what your rights are. Tune into Know Your Qanoon with me, Amit Rana. This is a podcast meant to answer all your law-related queries. Catch Know Your Qanoon every week on the IVM website or the app or anywhere you get your podcast from.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.